And here we go. It is another chance for us to have a Chat Canna show, and it is an exciting Friday. Wow, it's been a crazy week. We got to check in with Veronica Michael, of course, down there at Prairie Products in Fargo and see what kind of a week she's had. But up here, the weeds are growing, and I've been out on the tractor trying to mitigate unfriendly plants in the field and doing all of that, plus all sorts of things. Our hemp plants that we have outside are like little Christmas trees. Now, let me introduce my co-host as we're waiting for our guest to appear. Her name is Veronica Michael. She is down there in one of the top 10 places to live in the United States of America, Fargo, North Dakota. Big drum roll, please. Good morning, Veronica.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a rainy day in Fargo today, actually.
Oh, wow. No, not here. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a little rainy. It's been a rainy week in Fargo. We've had a lot of water this week. The tomatoes have gotten a lot of water, so the garden's looking really good.
Okay.
But it has been a good week at Prairie Products, too. Our farmers are doing well. We got to see a lot of growth in the field this Wednesday on some calls with farmers in the Minot area, which was beautiful to see their plants and how big they've gotten.
Wow.
They have had some wild weather up in that part of North Dakota, so it's been a tough first growing season.
Well, we wish them well, and of course, guys, send us your pictures. There's no such thing as a bad picture because everything is something we can learn from. We've had so much fun seeing Riley's photos as they've developed this year, and also our friends that we made last week. See how fast the year goes from out in Minot and watching their first crop come along. And I see AJ has now joined us. So, Mr. DeMille, we're ready for your close-up here. 3, 2, 1. Let's bring him in from the green room. Here we go. Look at that. It's like
hey,
magic.
AJ.
Hey, how are you
Good
guys?
morning. Good. How are you doing?
Good morning to both of you. I'm well. How about both of you?
We're really good. Really good.
Excellent.
So we are excited to have AJ joining us. AJ is going to be joining with us for a lot of times now. And AJ is a formulator in Wyoming that we've had the pleasure to work with at Prairie Products, and is really, he's a race car driver and a father of triplets. He has lots of great titles, actually.
There's 24 perfectly usable hours every day.
I was looking at your article in the Glen Rock Independent, I believe it was, last night, about when you had your triplets. Now they're 6 now, correct? How old are your triplets?
They just turned 3 in May.
Okay, 3.
Oh, she doubles up everything. You got to watch.
She'll like 6 kids, but I have 3 more triplets I don't know about.
She'll double everything. You just got to.
I thought they were 6 years old, but they're 3.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So they just turned 3 in May, and people, they're identical girls, and people ask us how we tell them apart, and the best way is by their personality.
Oh, I thought you put an X on the bottom of the phone.
Might get in trouble for that one.
Yeah, of course.
That's fabulous. So they all are really different.
Very, very different personalities. So that's how we're primarily able to tell them apart.
Well, AJ, tell us a little bit about your background in hemp formulation.
Sure, yeah. So my educational background, actually, I have a bachelor's in chemistry and then a master's in agricultural biochemistry. So what that means is I was looking at a lot of farming techniques and methods in micronutrient demands in different cropping systems. And so that just translated into extending my education and learning in formulation with an additional background in pharmaceuticals and pharmacopoeia. Body Armor Products, our company is a father-son team, and my dad is a compounding pharmacist. And so, I started at a young age formulating with him in his pharmacy, in the 90s and 2000s. And when I went off to college, kind of went a different route, but now we are back together again doing formulation.
Wow.
And so, with that has translated into his background is in hormone replacement therapy. And it's funny how similarly cannabinoids act when you're formulating with them as compared to hormones and pharmaceuticals. And so CBD as a result, and cannabinoids in general, and cannabis chemistry, has been kind of an easy transition for us. And so here we are today doing formulation that really I don't see anywhere else in the market. So we are doing something that's very unique as compared to, I'd say, 97 to 99% of the other products that you would find on the CBD and cannabis market.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, one other thing that you mentioned recently that I thought was so unique, and I have to bring it up because we're in the Red River Valley, is you did research with sugar beets.
I did sugar beets and soybeans. In Wyoming, particularly, we've had this not strange, but terrific transformation in the last about 15 years in growers transitioning from traditional herbicide regimens, treating both soybeans and sugar beets, to using glyphosate-resistant cropping systems, which makes sense because you're a lot less input for the grower with a lot greater output for the grower, which is beneficial for everybody. No matter politically what you think about glyphosate resistance or not, in the end, it really is beneficial, for the grower to be using these type of cropping systems. And we went from, in Wyoming, about 2 to 3% of growers using glyphosate-resistant crops to 99%, particularly in sugar beets.
And let's take a moment and explain that for somebody who doesn't know what that means or how that works. Give us a one sentence story about that.
So you used put me on the spot here.
Well,
let's just take sugar beets for example. Okay. You're using conventional sugar beet cropping system. You're using a 5 herbicide regimen. That I would compare giving the crop, chemotherapy. You have high cost, high input for really, really low output. You see sugar beets looking more like a carrot versus glyphosate resistance. So what happens is you're applying glyphosate to a glyphosate resistant sugar beet for this case. And while the glyphosate is getting into the leaves and metabolized by the sugar beet, it's not actually being uptaken or used by the crop. So in the example of sugar beets, the glyphosate gets metabolized into AMPA, but it's not blocking the shikimate pathway like it would in broadleaf weeds, is what you're trying to control. So what the shikimate pathway does is it blocks the synthesis of branched chain amino acids, and therefore the broadleaf weed will die, while the sugar beet actually does not. So what happens in the end is it deposits the AMPA in its below root system in the top 8 inches of topsoil. And what we were looking at, particularly in my graduate school research, was whether AMPA and glyphosate were binding to trace metals that the plant needs to survive. And I looked at iron, manganese, cobalt, boron, and magnesium. And we discovered at the time that there was not a chelation happening in the topsoil, thus preventing the plant from uptaking these micronutrients. At the time of my grad school research, there was one paper that said, yes, they do, or yes, glyphosate does, and the other one said, no, it doesn't. So there's your one paragraph or, full intro to my thesis.
And now to bring that down again, what it is sugar beets, soybeans, is it corn too? There's about 8 crops that have been modified this way. When you have that modified crop, you plant that, you can spray glyphosate on it. It doesn't affect the crop, but it kills the other weeds in the field.
Correct.
So good. Okay. All right. So we had this, and then we had this, and now we have this.
And we have this.
Okay.
Everyone learned something. Okay, that was awesome. So for both of you, actually, do you guys see a correlation with a specialty crop like hemp taking an application in our region, like sugar beets have in the regions like Wyoming and here in the Valley?
I do. We'll see what happens with, ag tech in the next, I'd say, 2 to 3 years, in my opinion. Because there is really no labeled herbicides for hemp or cannabis in general. Like there are with every other cropping system, 99% of other cropping systems. I think that there's probably something in the works that they're gonna release some sort of herbicide that's labeled for use in hemp. I mean, it's just natural, right?
John, what do you think?
Well, I think we have to take it, at least for the North Dakota and the prairie farmers in Minnesota, we have to take it from sort of like the hobby 1 acre, 2 acre, 5 acres. North Dakota wants to farm road to road. And that farmer's got to be able to plant it 160 acres and know that he can harvest it and take it somewhere. And when we can get that chain working, it seems to fit in really good with crop rotation. And matter of fact, our expert crop rotation guy is right here. And that's one of my questions is, where do we put it in the soybean, sugar beet, grain cycle? How does it fit there, and how does it help or hurt, or what do we have to augment to make it fit in a cycle?
So in my opinion, that's a great question. That's a really good topic of conversation, especially for growers and people that may be considering hemp in a rotation, not specifically for CBD hemp, but textile hemp and other sorts of hemp that you can grow on a 640 acre plot or 160 acres, what have you. In my opinion, I think that since hemp has such a great root system and such a deep root system, that it can really help break up the impact, soil impact, really contribute to soil organic matter, which is definitely a challenge that we have in Wyoming. I mean, our organic matter is less than 1%.
Here too, always a challenge.
Soil, water infiltration, again, with the root system being so diverse and complex and deep. Where do I think it fits into a crop rotation? I would say, here would be, post corn, post alfalfa, somewhere before a grain, or pre corn, especially if you can figure out a way to input a lot of nitrogen, because that the corn is going to certainly hoard all the nitrogen it can in the topsoil. So pre corn, post alfalfa, I'd be somewhere in that range.
How about in a sugar beet cycle?
Post sugar beets.
Post sugar beets, okay.
Yep. But in that, in that sense, the topic, you get a cash crop in sugar beets, and then you can follow it with another cash crop with hemp. I think it's
exactly. Oh, that's right.
I mean, and growers here are trying to maximize their profits, like we all are, with little input. And why not? I think that, especially if there is some sort of labeled weed control for hemp, then you can grow, 160 acres. Why not put it as, if you're just going to grow it as a textile or something that's non-CBD, they also use it as a cover crop. Mm-hmm. Or interseed it with like a rye or something.
Interesting. Okay. And then, but you would harvest it, you would still harvest it for profit. I mean, you would take it off the field.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's cover crops to me. Are you grow them and plow them under kind of a concept? So,
right. So my idea here is, interseed something that may not grow as tall, but you can come through with a 7-foot tall textile hemp plant and still harvest,
interesting,
7 feet up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I agree. You can leave the stock You could leave the stalk with the rye or what have you, the vetch or whatnot, and plow that under too, or use it as a grazing, a grazing field or something like that.
Wow.
Wow.
Lots of news coming our way today.
Well, yeah,
Veronica.
we're both like dumbfounded. And, we invited AJ to talk about formulation.
Yeah. But this is
This is super exciting.
this is awesome.
You are a Renaissance man, AJ.
Well, Veronica, like I said earlier, there's 24 perfectly usable hours in every day, right?
There are.
You can take the boy off the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the boy, right?
No, you cannot. You cannot. One of the things that we did want to talk to you today about formulation, and before we even jump into the cannabinoids, I want to step back to talk a little bit about the work that you've done with your father in compounding pharmacy or other types of work, because I think the whole idea of potential therapies with a lot of compounds sometimes gets confusing for people. So can you maybe explain to me the other work that you're doing with vitamins, other minerals, and how you see that as a potential therapy generally? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, definitely. So we're not just a CBD company. So Unbound CBD is not, that's not all that we do 100% of the time. Our nutritional supplement company is called Hackla Labs, and it is a family-run company. It's my dad and I, and we do all of the formulation, and we do all the pill punching and that sort of thing. We also specialize in iodine testing. So we test iodine, bromide, fluoride, chloride using ICP-MS and ion selective electrode. And so iodine is really our main focus at Hackla Labs. Dad, like I said, Dad and I do all the testing and pill making, and my sisters, they handle all of the e-commerce sales, fulfilling orders. And so my dad, really, his research has been into iodine for the last 12 years or so. And we've now moved into a lot of research into boron as well as a supplement. A lot of our other formulations, nutraceuticals, and healthcare supplements really focus on one thing, right? They're unilateral. So iodine, thyroid, boron, great for people with osteopenia, osteoporosis, low bone density, those sort of things. And then, we do standard formulation for magnesium, B vitamins, and things that are super beneficial. So, thought that Dad and I had about 8 months ago was what would happen if we created a term called CBD combo therapy. So we're combining nutritional supplements with CBD cannabinoids. And so that's where we're at now. Being on this wild frontier of adaptogens, as we're calling them, or CBD combo therapy, we're combining nutritional supplements and naturopathic remedies with cannabinoids. For example, we're, one of our more successful formulations up to this point, and one of our first formulations came when my wife and I, about when the girls were about 2.5, so the end of year last year, they started sleeping through the night all of a sudden. So both of us were up all night still because we were used to like the white noise and the crying and getting up and thinking. So how could we apply cannabinoids or CBD in the sense that it's really calming and can, really suppress anxiety? How can we combine that with another therapy that we know so well to really aid in sleep? So that's how the first formulation with the adaptogenics was formed, which is the sleep drops, as you know, the sleep drops. And so what we're doing is we're not only combining CBD, full spectrum CBD, with melatonin and valerian root, and then we're also using select cannabis terpenes from an indica plant called Granddaddy Purple, which is really, it's 100% indica, really famous for sleep anxiety, people that deal with a lot of pain, cancer patients in that crowd. But using just the terpene extracts to recombine it into a formulation with all of those other things, being melatonin, valerian, CBD, to really aid in sleep. Now that product overall has become our #1 seller at Unbound and Adaptogenics because A, it works, B, people are getting the best sleep of their lives, and C, not only do we make it with the full spectrum, but we also make it in a broad spectrum T3 for those people that may get drug tested or don't really know how they would do with even trace amounts of THC.
Absolutely.
All the products are third party tested, and that particular product comes back at 0.05% THC, so well below the legal limit. As we've found with not just this formulation, but with all of our other adaptogen and combo therapy products, is the entourage effect of the THC really helping the binding and uptake in the body of THC, or of the cannabinoids in general. We're also finding that terpenes, particularly this formulation with the Granddaddy Purple, that the terpenes are really helping with binding and uptake of the cannabinoids as well.
Absolutely. We were so excited to work with you for our products, AJ, because that combination of valerian, CBD, and melatonin, it's the perfect mixture to get to sleep and stay asleep. And it is our bestseller. It is the thing that we've had the most comments, calls about, and people love it.
Right. And, looking at our records too, we almost have an 80% customer return rate on that particular product because it worked. Great. And it works every time. So it's the same crowd that are coming back and saying, oh, I'm having the best sleep in my life. I'm dealing with PTSD. I'm dealing with, same things I am. Like, my kids are growing up and I couldn't sleep because of the white noise. I have pain, like this and that and the other thing is, the product works, and it works every time. And it's such a clever use of those different ingredients and combining them into one therapy. And that's really what, that's really what my dad and I were trying to accomplish with the adaptogenic formulas is, can we make it work? And can we make it work every time? So people are using this product and saying, oh my God, like this is the best, best CBD therapy I've ever had. Yeah. There are other products on the market like that. Like for example, my cousin, who is medevac in Afghanistan, came back and is working at Denver Health as a EMT. He couldn't sleep too for obvious reasons, and he was trying. He's in Denver; they can get pretty much whatever they want with cannabis and CBD down there, and saying, "Hey, like I have this, it's okay, but it kind of works, but not really." I'm like, "Okay, let me send this to you." And now, every month he has to get the broad spectrum version, so the T3, but he just rant and raves to anybody that'll listen about it. So that's the best compliment you can get, is somebody referring somebody else, and we're certainly seeing that for sure.
I think that is another thing that I'm so surprised by the product, AJ, is our customers who purchase the tea-free version of the Sleep and Relax or the terpene rich, they both are experiencing the same result, and that's fantastic. You can find something that works for you and get relief, and it can fit into your lifestyle.
Definitely. So we don't just that's one of our formulations. We have a Common Clarity, which is combining carnitine, ginkgo biloba, hydrosine, boron with CBD Common Clarity, and that's in a pressed tablet, of course, for extreme mental clarity. And that is another one of our best sellers. We do another one that's pain and inflammation, really exploiting the ability of cannabinoids to deal with inflammation in particular. And so, we're combining CBD with beetroot extract, which is a really, really strong anti-inflammatory, as well as supporting blood pressure and blood flow. And what that does is it really helps with the structure of the blood vessel and the ability to control blood pressure as well as inflammation.
Okay, can I ask a question? I want to jump way back to like the little thing again. So, one thing that I love about talking to you about CBD combo therapy is that I think a misconception right now is that you need more CBD to be effective. So can we just first start with a conversation around how much? Because I think many of our listeners are seeing, you walk into places, you see a dosage that's 5 milligrams, you see 15. I mean, you see every night.
Thousands.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
recently saw a tincture on Facebook, how they're actually able to get away with an advertisement on Facebook for CBD. I'm very jealous.
Me too.
But it was 5,000 milligrams per ounce in a tincture.
Is what?
5,000, 5 grams of CBD per ounce.
Wow.
That's like impossible, right? I mean,
You know,
the math doesn't work out.
how much did that cost?
Yeah, I didn't even look. I just started laughing, and of course, in the comments, people were haranguing them on, like, pretty much taking a spoonful of crude and going, that's what it kind of seemed like for me. But yeah, that's a very large amount of CBD in a dose. The problem is if you're presenting traditional CBD, not that there isn't a place for it, drops, tinctures, and that sort of thing, is that the research is showing that you're only going to absorb about 5 to 7% in the gut. So you're intaking, let's say, a 50 milligram per ml drop. By the time it gets to your liver and gets emulsified, the uptake into the bloodstream is going to be about 5 milligrams. However, it's almost a sustained release, right? You're going to be taking a 1 ml, and you'll start feeling effects in like an hour. 45 minutes to an hour traditionally is what I see with that sort of therapy. Now, if you're able to figure out a way for cannabinoids to be uptaken quickly, it's a completely different story. So to answer your question, a lot of our compounds, a lot of our formulations here in the lab, we've figured out a way to take the oil and convert it into a water-soluble form. So our chewable tablets, which is our strongest line and our oldest line, both for humans and animals, you're able to chew it. You're starting to get absorption in your mouth, continuing into your gut, constantly absorbing. So you're getting high amounts of cannabinoid absorption in a short amount of time. What that means is that a less is more sort of therapy, and it works quicker. So people that are, dealing with PTSD, people that are dealing with anxiety are able to get relief without having to wait an hour for a drop or a tincture or something like that. The only downside I've seen to, these sort of formulations is that it may not quite act as long as an oil formulation. So the half-life in the body may be a little bit shorter. That being said, on the converse side of, formulations, so topicals, you see a lot of those products on the market that are 1,000 milligrams, 1,500 milligrams per ounce in a topical. People are saying, oh, this doesn't work. It's total garbage. It's snake oil. Our topical comes in at 5 milligrams per gram. However, it works, and it works very well. Because we're able to effectively get the cannabinoids to penetrate the skin, to the affected site, whether it be arthritis, inflammation, muscle pain, nerve pain, neuropathy, those sort of pains, pinched nerves works very well for, people with sciatica. We've actually had a fair amount of customers come back to us and tell us that they're having a lot of success with gout. Because again, we're combining cannabinoids, and in the topical, like our main topical, which is 5 milligrams per gram, we're combining with a very, very prolific terpene profile, as well as a carrier that has the ability to really penetrate under the skin. Like the topical, you can look at this, all of our products are now, required to have a QR code. So you can scan it and look at terpene profile, cannabinoids and THC and all that, and potency. the terpenes are like 5% of the formulation, which is insanely high. So again, combo therapy, terpenes, cannabinoids, carrier. And so that's why it works so well. People come back like, well, why isn't it 10 milligrams or 20 milligrams per gram? It's like, we never had a reason to make it 10 or 20 because it works so well at 5. You know, why try to sell you more than you need?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think a lot about like vitamin D, or how we've thought about other supplements, you know, when they've come onto the market and people have kind of said, okay, well, let's take 8,000 milligrams a day, or is it 1,000, or is it, you know, kind of this conversation seems to happen always, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you can have something that's garbage formulation is a stats teacher at grad school taught garbage in, garbage out. If your formulation is garbage, you're not going to see an effect. And I think that's partially like the poor name that CBD formulation in general has gotten. Like, for the longest time, nobody was quality controlling anything. You know, nothing was third party tested. And if it was, like, the technology has come such a long way in testing cannabinoids and testing for cannabinoids efficiently. B, people are just kind of throwing, you know, garbage together and seeing what happens. And most importantly for me in working with prairie products, especially, is that you have to have a really quality input material, right? The product I get from prairie, you know, the crude and whatnot, it's of the highest quality and highest standard that I've personally ever seen in my 3+ years of formulation. I mean, it's so dynamic. So you got to start with quality material, and you got to know what you're doing. And that, I think, is a great starting recipe for high quality cannabinoid formulation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Last week we had some growers on the show with John, and, you know, it starts in the field and making sure that they're also complying with testing and really watching to make sure that that is not contaminated in any way when it comes into the shop. So yeah, it's a long process to make sure that it's a high quality product. Yeah.
Definitely.
Exciting. What's on the horizon? We've been talking about what you got. What are you and your dad?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what are you thinking about? I mean, what's
well, right now we've just released 2 products with a group that we're working with out of New Zealand, and a group that we're working with in Switzerland. And it is called Mega Chill. We've abandoned our conservative approach to labeling CBD, and as an 80s baby, I thought it would be fun to make a 80s themed product. You know, I'm not a designer, I don't do branding, but I thought it'd be fun, so I just kind of used my creative license, or what little there is there, to come up with this 80s themed product called Mega Chill. What Mega Chill is it uses what I mentioned earlier, our water solubilized cannabinoids. And it, you know, it's 12.5 milligrams of CBD, 12.5 milligrams of CBG, which is becoming, you know, trendy, for really high amounts of ability to calm. And we're actually combining it as well with house extracted ashwagandha, which is becoming a new buzzword in not just, well, actually it's not in CBD world at all, but ashwagandha is becoming, it has an amazing slew of therapy inputs, right? So primarily people are using it for calming, relaxation of the day. And really, you're finding it in gummies and capsules and things like that. We're putting it with CBD, CBG, and we're actually extracting the material in-house. So we imported the ashwagandha ourselves, and we're using an organic extraction to get the organics out, because what we found in our research with buying ashwagandha from a supplier is that it's like 5 to 7% ashwagandha extract. Who knows what that is? That they're essentially spray applying onto dextran. Well, we didn't want that. We wanted 100% potency in the room we were starting with. And so we're actually doing in-house. It's a long, funny story about importing ashwagandha from West Africa. I won't go there, but we got the material, we lab tested it in-house and confirmed purity that we were getting, and third-party tested the purity of the ashwagandha root. We were actually using it in conjunction with tyrosine as well, which is known as having very high cerebral activity for calming, relaxation.
What's that last? I didn't hear.
Tyrosine. It's an
How do you
amino
spell it?
acid.
How do you spell it?
Tyrosine. Tyrosine.
Tyrosine. Okay.
Yeah, it's an amino acid, L-tyrosine.
Okay.
So for this kind of work with, really kind of the CBD combo therapy, these are clients outside of the US. Is that kind of movement, innovation just happening in Europe and other markets more quickly, or what? Why do you see this happening like this?
So I don't know the answer to that, Veronica, to be honest. The only thing I can think of is that, and this is a broad judgment, is that Europeans love pills. They don't want they don't want chocolates. They don't want gummy bears. They don't want apples.
In comparison to other.
I mean, it's what's familiar with them, right? Like, particularly like we're having a little bit more trouble with importing into the UK, just because UK is like zero tolerance for any THC. I'm not known for using isolate in any of my formulations, just because of my personal feelings on formulating with the isolate. So using a broad spectrum T3, it's coming with great scrutiny. It's something that we're working on with a lot of our acquaintances in the market and people that are savvy with export-import into Europe. Certainly Australia and New Zealand is the same way. It's zero THC. Our Southeast Asian markets the same way. It's absolutely zero THC.
And when you say zero, I mean not 0.0006.
Yeah.
You're saying zero. I mean, how do you get to zero?
That's a good question. There's some labs that can confirm high sensitivity THC testing. Okay. I know that like our lab that we use in Arizona, which is C4 Labs in Mesa, they've been amazing to work with. We've gone to them recently. So they're a member of Confident. If you're familiar with, in the cannabis testing world, Confident Cannabis, which is very, very user-friendly, but C4, they offer a triplicate ultra high sensitivity THC testing service. So you submit samples and they're able to really test down, I think by another factor of 10 for THC.
Wow. Okay.
So they're like, MDL is like, their detection limit is, another factor of 10.
And you send the finished product to them.
Correct. Yep.
So they take it in pill form or whatever you're actually going to export. That's what they can take apart and come back and say, we verify there is no THC in this. Wow.
Yeah. And I know that, there's a lab that we used to use in Denver that does the same thing. So this isn't like a unique testing service. It is readily available. And I think that the technology with testing is there. I have a background as well as in analytical chemistry. And, I think it was just a minute before the technology for testing caught up with the actual technology to formulate. Sure. And so they're actually able to confirm, ultra low THC testing to confirm, THC free. You can buy THC free distillate, but is it really THC free or is it just below the MDL for THC? Yeah. So that's the kind of dichotomy you have to deal with when you're being very careful when buying THC free distillate, particularly, is that you have to be really, really careful on what the THC limit actually may be in that product. Because if you're taking a concentrate, right, so that's 85% THC, for example, or 85% CBD, and you're diluting it by 10,000 times, you're introducing an error to testing for THC of an equal proportion. So if the dilution is off, if the sensitivity isn't quite there, you're introducing an error, right? So by taking a finished product and actually being able to apply testing for very, very low amounts of THC is very beneficial, especially if you're marketing your products as being truly THC free versus being below a certain limit of THC.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, both of those products have a place in the world. I mean, some people like the idea that it's everything from the plant, even though the THC is way down.
Sure.
As opposed to
no. You're 100%. You're 100% right on, John. For me, I started in tea-free because that was our market here in Wyoming. I mean, we have a lot of, about 80% of our market here is people that work in the oil field, that are contractors, that are CDL drivers, that they can't have any THC.
Just zero.
At
Yeah.
all. They have to be testing zero.
That's why you were great for Prairie. That's North Dakota.
Yeah, you guys are in the same market in North Dakota, so I think there's a place for it. Personally, I'm a huge proponent of on-range effect, that being THC, and even micro amounts really assisting with absorption and binding of other cannabinoids.
And that's going to be a problem as probably the years go by and the country moves to a more liberal stance for recreation, but yet there's going to be this part of the world that has to stay in the box of no exposure, and that's going to be more difficult for those people, as it's going to be in cafes and taxis, and they're just going to brush by it in so many ways. It's almost going to be a wristband kind of a thing. Are you in or are you out?
Yeah, I mean, as it should be with cannabis, I think that people should be able to decide for themselves.
Yes,
and as well as a lot of other aspects. And I know this isn't a talk politics show, right, so I'm going to avoid that. But I think that
but it does seem that the world and even the United States is moving in that direction. But yet there are, like you talk about, I want the driver that's moving an 80,000 pound weight coming at me on the highway at 70 miles an hour to be drug free on any level. Alcohol, particularly our biggest problem, is, I want them to be alcohol free and every kind of drug free. I want the surgeon that works on me to not lay back a couple of anything that morning when he works on me. I think those are fair and reasonable expectations for people to have of people in those jobs.
Yeah, so, and you would kind of expect them to be that way, right?
Yeah.
Hope and trust that they're not in an altered state of mind. I'd prefer my surgeon to have taken a couple mega chills before he opens me up, but
well, maybe
everyone should take the mega chill.
Maybe they'll put a thing on the bed, and it's sort of like patient's choice, and you can have a little box there and say, "I'd like you to be on these when you."
I love it.
And the hippies could roll in, and it's like, yeah, well, let's go out back and we'll light up before you. But no, I seriously.
Okay, so in all seriousness, before we go down this crazy road, I want to ask about, because there was big news in hemp in the last, since last Friday. Like, there's been news. There's been news from the DEA and lots of murmur and talk about where we're going as an industry and how we'll be regulated. So let's jump into a little bit of that. Who wants to start?
Well, I'll just start in the fact that I think it's a peeing contest between the different agencies, and that's got to be worked out, and then we can talk about it from there. But to me, it's like, it's unfair to the farmers, it's unfair to the producers, the distributors, and everybody when the different agencies are coming up with different standards. Whatever the right standard might be, I'm not going to argue that or whatever. But it's not fair when the one government agency says, okay, we're going to interpret it this way. And then here comes the second agency going, oh, no. This is the new line. That's where I would start the discussion on. So.
Yeah, honestly, John, you echo I honestly have nothing to add to that. I'm very rarely speechless. And I think that really, I just would add that I think, as far as a grower standpoint, the USDA seemed to be managing it fine.
Yeah, leave us alone.
Yeah, leave us alone, right? And it's just I had a different term than peeing contest. I don't know if it's very appropriate.
That was
But
a
again,
better term for our listening audience.
I would honestly, I think that as far as biomass testing for the grower, I think the USDA needs to lighten up just a touch, but completely unfair for the DEA to come and say, listen, USDA, FDA for that matter, we don't care about the farm bill, we don't care about this, we don't care about that. What you guys are doing is going to be illegal by the end of October. And growers, formulators, retail, like it doesn't matter. That's just a blanket statement, which reminds me of very early days of CBD formulation when they kind of went down a similar rabbit hole, and then we're like, how are we going to actually enforce this?
Well,
so it's a peeing contest in my opinion.
Yep.
Veronica, what are your feelings from a growing and extraction?
Actually, I think John said it so well too. I thought it was an overstep and an intrusion into an already complex conversation that they didn't need to step their foot into. I also thought it was interesting to put out information that was still then not clear, was frustrating. I think of myself as a good reader. And when I read these documents, I'm like, what? So I think it is the Farm Bill laid out the information the way the federal and state agencies were trying to regulate. We all know that there was not enough hands on deck to do that regulation already. So I just don't know why it's like adding gasoline to a fire.
Right. I mean, they're certainly taking a stance as well about, which is a relatively new topic, being Delta 8 THC versus Delta 9. I think that since extraction and the chemistry, the stoichiometry perspective of, final product and concentrate is becoming more and more sophisticated, I think they're trying to catch up. And so their knee-jerk reaction is, oh, we're just going to ban it. It's going to be illegal, even though they have very little idea about something like Delta 8 THC. And not a lot of people know about Delta 8. So Delta 8 is a mild antagonist to Delta 9. Delta 9 THC being the psychotropic version of THC. And so the analogy I've always been acquainted with from a New Zealand contact of mine who's actually in Oregon, he says, well, Delta 9 puts you on the couch and Delta 8 gets you off the couch, right? So, Delta 8 is mildly psychotropic, and it is the equal and opposite reaction to Delta 9. So it'll, raise you off the couch and get you going. Again, the regulatory agency that has no idea what they're doing. So their knee-jerk reaction is to say, oh, illegal, banned, even though they had zero guidelines on it beforehand. So they're trying to play catch up, my opinion on the topic. So it's an example of overstep of boundary. Yes.
Yep. I think too that it's interesting to me because I think the genie is out of the bottle, right? I mean, the science behind separating the compounds and reorganizing them and what can come next. There's a lot ahead, I think, and I think there's a lot ahead.
Yeah.
I agree. Wow, we have covered so much today. I think for the show, we should just take a minute. AJ is going to be joining us on a regular basis, and we are going to talk chemistry with him and just learn about
farming, I guess,
and
too.
some farming. And,
that was awesome.
I'll send you both my pieces. It's great.
We're going to dig a little deeper into things like L-tyrosine and how that interacts with the hemp products, and we're going to just learn more, we talked today, for instance, about full and broad spectrum. And, to the average person, you would think that, well, full spectrum and broad spectrum should be the same thing. And we're going to, learn some of the differences about that and some more about dosing in the CBD world, and certainly about farming and should I get into farming hemp, and what's it like to get a license? And when you do get a license, I mean, are they visiting me every day? We were very lucky here on our farm by invitation. We had 4 DEA agents here a couple of months ago, and we were scheduled for 55 minutes with them. They were here for a couple of hours, and we just had the greatest conversation back and forth. And I guess what came away from that a lot of ways is they're not our enemies. For the regular people out here who are doing the kind of work Veronica's doing, and you're doing there as a formulator, and I'm doing here as a research and grower kind of guy, is they're kind of saying too, well, now I pick up this guy and he's got 2 pounds of stuff in his car and he's going, well, it's hemp, and which of course is legal, as opposed to it's marijuana, which is not legal. And they're in a pickle too, as this is all developing. So we're all learning and we're moving forward, and we're hoping that Chat Canna will be a place that people can come, and we're going to get more and more experts on, like some of the stuff that you heard today is just awesome information and makes us all smarter. And we hope that one day, like sunflowers came to the Red River Valley back in 1960 or so, and now you can go up in an airplane and see these fields of yellow that just go across the quilt. The same with soybeans and edible beans and peas and all those things. And one day that is what hemp fields are going to look like as we go across North Dakota and all the way out to Wyoming there. And we haven't even talked about Wyoming some more. I got lots of Wyoming chatter for you as we get going, AJ. So
everybody seems to have a story. I get 2 things like, oh, that time when I was in Wyoming, I had the greatest time, or oh, I remember going to Yellowstone or whatever. So,
or do you know Bill? He lives in Cheyenne.
Yeah. People say that Wyoming is like a city block. Everybody is everybody's neighbor, and everybody seems to know each other, which is definitely been a very, very good thing for me as a small business owner and member of the community. Our laboratory and our formulation is pretty much right in the smack middle of town. Of course, Glen Rock is where we're at, and it's 2,500 people. We have a very good relationship with law enforcement and legislatures here, as well as across the state. And, they keep a really good eye on the lab, which is great.
Sure.
And, they're members of the community, and they come in all the time and ask questions and get input. And we do the best we can here to keep the lines of communication open, because I certainly think that's what is really going to be a success story for hemp and cannabis in general, is being 100% transparent, being 100% honest, and having nothing to hide. Because when you're lying and trying to cover the truth, that's when relationships start to fall apart. Right. In Wyoming particularly, our hemp program is relatively young. House Bill 171 passed 2 years ago. So there's a lot of learning. There's a learning curve here. And so we're just trying to continue the path onwards and upwards between growing and all the way up to final products. So
I love to hear you say that. I think that's our sentiment with the city of Fargo and the systems here. We're all learning together as the first extractor in the city, working with the fire department and the city everyone is doing their jobs and learning something new with us and wanting us to succeed and cheering us on for our community. So
absolutely. That's right.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on so much. I really am looking forward to doing regular on your podcast, because as Veronica knows, about a week ago I'd put out a Facebook post of all things saying, hey, I'm thinking about starting a blog or vlog or podcast, because of these same reasons that you guys are going for. You want to be honest with the public and have transparency, and maybe you can learn a thing or two from each other along the way.
Absolutely. It's all about learning.
I was like, I'm going to have guests. I'm going to have a podcast. I'm going to go do all these different things that, guess what? It's already solved. So this is great partnership.
And we welcome your guests, and let's get them on here and start distributing this. And folks, if you're watching, depending on which format you're watching in, please subscribe or hit that like button. Make sure you're coming back starting next week. We're going to have some live content for you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Monday, Wednesday are going to be more of just us on with the news and talking about hemp and what's going on. Tuesdays and Thursdays will be longer format shows where we will have guests and we will be studying and learning, finding out what's going on in the hemp world from the farmer side, finding out should you be involved, or if you are involved, where can I get help? Who can I talk to? How can I make this happen? From the user point of view, you're going to learn everything there is to know. When you go into that store, you're going to be telling them things rather than asking questions, because you're going to know what's in those bottles that you're buying. AJ, thank you. We're looking forward to the next time we're together, which is going to be really soon. Veronica, always fun to have you on the show together. When we hooked up, I knew the first time I was in that round table with you, I said, I don't know why, but me and this gal are going to have some kind of connection as we go through life. It's just been so much fun. My name is John Reitmeier. We are all in the hemp business in one form or another together, and we hope to see you on Monday's show, 10 o'clock, the new time of the show, 10 o'clock Central Time, but you can always watch it on Facebook and YouTube, and it soon will be coming to LinkedIn. We're going to be out there in a whole bunch of places. The podcast will be, so if you're one of those joggers and want to listen to the show while you're running, you'll be able to download it on the iPod and all those different podcast kind of places. We're still young, we're developing, and the best is yet to come. So AJ, stay in the green room. We're going to do a little post chatting here. And for all the rest of you, we will say goodbye and welcome you to our next show. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.